right, good afternoon. As many of you know, as I've said pretty clearly in the past, it's my view that not every responsibility of government is created equally. And to me, there is no greater obligation of our government than to make sure that our young people have the knowledge and skill set to be able to compete in a global economy. And in that vein, many of you are aware that my office has conducted 4 special examinations into public school districts since last fall, finding spending abuses, issues with superintendents, and a lack of board oversight. Some of these things are particularly troubling, but given that we had superintendents who were able to pursue their misdeeds because their contracts were clouded in secrecy. Last week, I unveiled the Dayton Independent Schools exam, which found the former superintendent received nearly $224,000 in benefits without benefits and payments that were not approved by his board. Auditors there found that former superintendent was reimbursed $146,000 in retirement contributions and service credit purchases, benefits not included in his contract. He was paid $47,000 for sick and annual leave days that he should not have received, and we found rampant travel expense abuses. He doubled and even triple dipped, using district credit cards to pay for gas and expenses, submitting mileage for reimbursement, and receiving additional reimbursement from the KASA. Folks, if the school board is unaware of the benefits outlined in the package, I would ask you, how can the people of Kentucky be confident that their tax dollars are going to support school children? Auditors found similar issues in Mason County. The former superintendent there received salary and benefit increases that were not in his contract and that were not only approved by the board after our investigators discovered the increases. He used district credit cards for excessive expenditures on meals, travel, and other items. The board did not review the credit card statements. He was reimbursed for family health insurance even after he changed to single coverage, a benefit that the board was unaware of at the time. And as in Dayton, the district paid duplicate cost for travel expenses. He used $8,000 worth of fuel from city tanks while also submitting mileage for reimbursement. Perhaps most troubling, in Breathitt County, auditors found that the board did not approve a written contract for the superintendent for 3 years. These exams already have unveiled some common themes: lack of transparency and proper oversight by the board. That's why today I'm recommending to the Commissioner that the superintendent contracts, benefits, and evaluations be made available online for the public and press to have easy access to this extraordinarily important information. Currently, superintendent base salaries are indeed posted on the KDE website, but we know this is only part of the equation. School board members and the public need to see total compensation packages, just the way the media analyze our university basketball coaches' compensation packages totally, rather than look solely at base salaries. In addition to copies of contracts, we recommend that the department ask for the following information as well as the dollar amounts associated with the benefits: monthly travel allowances, the exclusive use of a district vehicle, including if it is for personal use, the use of district fuel or district credit card to purchase fuel, including if it is for personal use, payment or reimbursement for cell phone and internet services, insurance, leave time and maximum leave allowed to be accumulated, reimbursement for personal retirement contributions, reimbursement for the purchase of retirement service credit, payment or reimbursement for a retirement annuity, payment or reimbursement for educational tuition assistance, and association memberships. Additionally, I think evaluations should be made more readily available to the public. State law allows boards to conduct either written or oral evaluations. If they conduct verbal evaluations, the law states that summary notes should be taken. I recommend the written evaluations or summary notes also be included and submitted to KDE. I appreciate Commissioner Holliday's acceptance of these recommendations, in addition to other calls he has made in recent weeks to improve superintendent evaluations and board training and oversight. I also appreciate the Office of Educational Accountability's involvement. This move comes at precisely the same time that OEA, at the request of the Education Accountability and Assessment Review Subcommittee of the Kentucky General Assembly, is looking into superintendent employment issues as part of its 2013 study agenda. My office is continuing to work in education because I believe that every dollar wasted is a dollar that we can't get to the classroom. I am joined by outstanding educational leaders today who all share a common belief that educational bureaucracies exist to support and drive classroom performance, not the other way around. As long as I'm in public life, as long as I'm the taxpayer watchdog, I will continue to make sure we have aggressive oversight in the area of our most critical government focus, which is educating our young people. I'll have additional announcements in the coming months about our involvement in the education realm, but I think it's clear that the work of this office and the reform efforts of Commissioner Holliday and the superintendents we're joined by today has clearly struck a nerve with the community. And I want to point out that against the backdrop of shrinking budgets in which schools are required to educate children, back-to-school lists that are dramatically larger and more comprehensive than they used to be, teacher salaries that haven't been significantly raised in years, when we live in a state in which I have yet to meet the Kentucky school teacher who doesn't buy things for their children out of their own pocket. Folks, we've got to make sure that every precious dollar that we have in Kentucky that needs to be driving excellence in the classroom, that needs to be focused on making sure our young people have a fighting chance, needs to get there. I am joined by, I'm going to introduce Commissioner Holliday in just a moment, but I want to point out that I'm joined by three superintendents, two of whom are doing, in my view, extraordinary work trying to clean up messes that could have been prevented if we had had this kind of accountability and transparency in place. Mr. Donald Pace to my left, who is running the cleanup effort in the Mason County schools. Jay Brewer, who is trying to piece back together a broken school district in the wake of what I found to be the most personally offensive investigation that my office has conducted in my tenure. And Mr. Tom Shelton, who on the other side of the agenda is someone who is running the Fayette County school districts and is doing so in a way that, in my view, absolutely personifies the accountability, the transparency, the commitment to both taxpayers and children that we expect superintendents to have.
In addition, we'd be remiss if we did not mention that it is also a local board's responsibility to evaluate all contracts, benefits, and expenses and determine if those costs are legitimate. We need to better equip our board members to make those decisions in a fiscally responsible manner. As these audits show, a lot of board members do not have the capacity or capability today to make those decisions. As part of this process, the State Board of Education will be considering a revision to the state regulations governing board member training to require that there's mandatory training in the areas of finance and ethics for all school board members across the state. We'll be starting that process in April at the board meeting, the state board meeting then. In addition, we've been working with Kentucky Association of School Administrators to beef up superintendent training. As part of that process, CASA is developing a set of superintendent effectiveness standards which are currently being piloted. And these will drive and improve professional practices in our state. In addition, as Auditor Edlin mentioned, we are increasing transparency on the superintendent evaluation process. We've called on all local boards to submit in writing their superintendent evaluation process by December of this year. We require in these superintendent evaluations that will include all performance measures for graduation rate, college career readiness, student proficiency, and student gap growth. So all those are academic things which we recognize that superintendents are responsible for. In addition, we're going to require that all superintendents are evaluated based on key fiscal goals, such as balancing their budgets and reporting information appropriately. Finally, the superintendent evaluation plan will also include a requirement that all annual written evaluations are public through board meeting minutes and are also among the documents submitted to the Department of Education for posting on our website. We certainly appreciate all the efforts of the State Auditor's Department and Auditor Edlin in shining a light on something which is terribly important to all of us. I will say in my role as the Chief Financial Officer of the Department of Education, I certainly recognize that with shrinking dollars, we need to do a better job educating our children with less. And so we applaud these efforts, and we hope that we'll continue this partnership with not only the Auditor's Office, but OEA in improving these types of activities. Thank you.
Thank you. I think a very good point was made that this is certainly not the what we're dealing with here. No problem, Brenda. What we're dealing with here certainly isn't, I think, descriptive of what we're dealing with enterprise-wide. I think most superintendents and most administrators are committed to absolutely doing the right thing. But when you conduct 4 investigations, and 3 of which you find significant failings in which the people who were charged with administering school districts were to varying degrees enriching themselves at the expense of their children, clearly it calls for new safeguards in place to make sure that this kind of abuse can't and is less likely to occur anywhere. In the vein of highlighting a community that gets it right and a school system that gets it right, I'd like to call up Superintendent Tom Shelton from Fayette County Public Schools.
Thank you. It's an honor to get to be here, and it's an even greater honor to get to serve the students and all of the citizens of Lexington and Fayette County. And I appreciate the opportunity to address the issues that have been shared and brought before us, because in today's society, as we all know, accountability is something that we all have to face and deal with on a regular basis, and we as educators normally do that on very, very well. And I have to say that after spending 18 years in school district administration, the overwhelming majority of school district administrators and superintendents that I've worked with are models of integrity, and they are true exemplary administrators in their school districts. I know they're trained. I currently work with them on doing that training in the areas of finance. I know that their school board members are trained through the Kentucky School Board Association in their work there. But it's time for us to step up our efforts and to make sure that we do things better. And we always need to make sure that we're focused on being open and transparent. Today, to model that, I wanted to step forward and be the first one to say that I brought my contract and my evaluation and all the instruments to right here. And
Thank you, and I'll give it to the Commissioner.
They've already been submitted to the OEA office in the study that's been mentioned. I want to recommend to Commissioner Holliday and to all the superintendents that they do the same thing. Because we all need to be open and transparent about the benefits and salaries we receive, and make sure that we're accountable to our public. We have to make sure we're above reproach so that our children receive the best possible services they can. And I look forward to these efforts of trying to continue making sure that we do the right things for the children of Kentucky. Thank you.
Thank you. As I said earlier, the investigation of the Dayton School District was the one that was most personally offensive to me. And just to rehash that for a moment, this is a small school district in northern Kentucky, less than 1,000 kids, in which 90% of the kids there are on free and reduced lunch. And 90%. And what we had there was his predecessor enriched himself at the expense of those kids. I think that's pretty clear. And it absolutely turned my stomach. And for, Jay, I came in here after Crit Llewellyn. I know what it's like to inherit a high-performing organization. I can't imagine what it's like to come in and have the cleanup mission that you've got, particularly with the abuses that have hit and impacted those children dramatically to the tune of $240 a head. I would point out to you that in Kentucky, we often talk about what the real cost of public corruption is. In the Dayton School District, it was about $240 a kid. And that's just not right. And I want to welcome a young superintendent who I think is doing an outstanding job putting that district back together, to have him talk about why he supports this aggressive reform effort.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I wish I could start the same way and say it's an honor to be here, but I don't think I'm here for the same reasons as Superintendent Shelton. I do want to thank the Commissioner for his support. Made some early calls in July and nothing but full support from that organization, as well from Auditor Eland's office, complete support there as well. And I also want to thank the KSA. I am in the new superintendent training, and Tom's been a part of that, and I believe Wayne Young's here as well. They've been nothing but spectacular in helping me guide through this process. I also want to repeat as well that the vast majority of superintendents out here are doing the right thing every day and have done the right thing. And that's servicing the children of Kentucky. You know, driving down here, and it's a little bit of a drive down here. It was kind of looking for some comparisons there, and the Commissioner knows I like baseball a little bit, and I reminded me of some of the corruption that was happening with the steroid scandal, and you know, the things that were taking place with those guys hitting 70, 80 home runs a year, and the things that needed to be put in place to make sure those things don't happen again. And that's what I'm here to talk about, to make sure that this doesn't happen in another school district in the state of Kentucky. Because what we've seen in Dayton are lost opportunities for kids that will never have those opportunities brought back. We are going to recover the money and get that back into the district, but I can't go backward and get those school years back for these kids. So we need to make sure going forward that we have things in place like what we're talking about today, to make sure we don't have another press conference and have this event happen again. So I'm glad to be in support of this, and thank everyone for their support.
The issue in Mason County, I've often said that those who administer our schools have two obligations. The first is to the children they're in charge of educating. The second is to those taxpayers who pay to finance that education. And what we saw in Mason County was troubling in that while a high-performing school district, one in which kids were doing well, you clearly had a superintendent there who confused his mission and was benefiting himself beyond what his contract called for. And I was very pleased when the local school board there brought in a fellow I have known for a number of years, who I can personally testify to his good character and integrity and his ability to straighten out messes. And I think Mr. Pace, who has been at this for a long time, can speak about what this potentially means, not just in Mason County, but beyond, all across the education space. Don Pace.
Thank you, Auditor, Commissioner. You know, when I received the call for the first opportunity and challenge that I was going to have in Mason County, I felt confident in my expertise to resolve the issue that was there. My main challenge, though, was to strive to assure that nothing impacted the educational program of the boys and girls of Mason County, and they could continue to work on a daily basis to close the achievement gaps that we have there and across the state. It's very fortunate. The next issue was to send word to the staff that the issue was at hand, the issue would be addressed, and the issue would be put behind us, and we would move forward in a very quick manner. I've been very fortunate. I've received a very positive reception in Mason County. We've had positive comments from the press that have given us strong coverage at each particular board meeting. We've received strong support from the community. In fact, just last week, in a community that is recovering, we had one of our local industries that came forward and made a donation of $250,000 to establish a soccer track and also an outdoor event track field. These type of activities show that the people in Mason County continue to have faith in their school system and in the people that comprise the school system, and also the process that's in place and will be put in place. I commend the auditor and the commissioner and my colleagues when we say that we know the vast majority of superintendents and board members perform their responsibilities to the fullest extent on a daily basis. I also reflect on a statement that my grandfather from Harlan County made. And that statement was, you always want people to have respect. Respect for the educational principles that we're espousing today. But if we do not respect these principles, we must fear the consequences of not adhering to the principles. And I think the message that the auditor and the commissioner have established to come forward will certainly make all of us think about those particular issues. It's been an honor for me to work with the commissioner and with the auditor during this process. Without them, the job would have been much more awesome than what it has been. But Mason County is on the way back. The situation is behind us, and we're looking enthusiastically forward to what the future holds for the boys and girls, staff, and the citizens of Mason County. Thank you.
Excellent. Any and all of us are available for questions if anybody has any.
Aren't school boards the ones that hire superintendents?
Certainly, but what we need to do, and I'll speak to this, but what we need to do is make sure we have the appropriate level of governance in place. And school boards absolutely have to manage that relationship with their superintendent. But I think when we outsource the function for running our schools and say, well, that's just the school board's issue, when as a society collectively where we want to go in Kentucky is 100% tied up in the success of individual school districts, I think it's important to take information that speaks to the performance of those who run our schools and democratize it and make it available to people so they can not just hold their school boards accountable, but can hold those who run these important school districts accountable. Add to that.
My experience is that sometimes school boards are not focused on the big ticket items like fiscal management and student achievement. For that purpose, we've got a draft of what we're going to require school boards to review with their superintendents each year as part of the evaluation. We already have partnership with the School Boards Association on training of school boards for these very important annual goals. So yes, they hire them, but that's just the beginning. That's day one. They have to be there to provide support and accountability and oversight for the taxpayers of their community.
I'd like to ask, please, my name is Marla Concrete, I'm with the Ledger. And I admire your all's efforts, and I've been following this very closely. But my question that I had of Kevin Brown the other day in your office, and that I would ask of all of you here, you're going to train them to be fiscally responsible, you're going to train them to have a new set of ethics. But my question, as being a taxpayer, a parent of a student in Mason County, and as a news reporter, is how are you going to convey to these people that are elected that they are an agent of the state and that it rests on their shoulders that they truly are the superintendent's boss? I've covered the Mason County School Board since March of '07, and I have witnessed that when a school board member challenges, he or she is outvoted by their peers on issues such as a rollover contract. And I have a copy of a story that I published. So I want to know in your new training how you're going to convince regular people that step up to do a good deed and only get $3,000 a year pay, plus nice expenses and trips to get trained and to learn at KSBA and KEA, how you're going to convince them not to be intimidated any longer by the superintendent and to stand up and do their job.
Yeah, go ahead.
Great question.
Yes, it is.
we're gonna need the partnership of the media and the community. The people in the community have to have access to the very information you're talking about. They've got to see, and mine, sorry Tom, my salary and compensation will be first on the website. And my annual evaluation will be there for everybody to see. I think it's incumbent on the community and the media to support school board members who ask the appropriate questions. Many of my superintendent friends worry about this, but they shouldn't. This gets us focused on the important stuff. I know a superintendent recently that allegedly lost his job because there was a hole in the parking lot. Now, that's not the right thing for board members to focus on. Board members need to focus on these big issues. So if you've got the data, you've got the information, you're covering the meetings, and the community is expecting this, that's all we can do. Because eventually school board members are accountable only to the voters. And it happens once every 4 years for each individual member. So hopefully it helps. If it doesn't, let us know and we'll try something else. Okay?
I would say that in our study in the education arena, but beyond that, is that well-run public institutions, the number one descriptive element of a well-run public institution is an appropriate balance between the executive and the oversight board. And that means making sure that the oversight boards don't become rubber stamps for, in this case, the superintendent. It also means making sure that superintendents or those in executive positions don't become lapdogs for a board. So the work that this office has done over the last number of years, even predating my administration, is that you can almost always find the singular thread of commonality when we have an institution that gets in trouble is where the relationship between the board and the executive or the administrator becomes significantly upset. And you've got executives who don't feel like they're truly responsible to their board anymore, is where we find a common level of real difficulty. And that repeats itself not just in the education arena, but all across our public institutions. I mean, the work that we've done on special districts, the work that my predecessors did with associations, all seem to have the common thread that you had a super empowered executive who ran roughshod over their board. And what you described is absolutely symptomatic of something that we find time and time again. So it's about making sure that those who represent the people, whether they be school board members or whether they serve or be appointed to office, understand that their primary commitment is their loyalty must be to the mission of, in this case, educating kids, rather than any kind of loyalty, overarching loyalty to any individual. I mean, we got to keep our eye on the ball. This is about, in this case, making sure that kids get the attention that they deserve, and that means asking the appropriate and difficult questions.
I would want to ask the commissioner to speak. I don't know if Mr. Desai can, but in fact, board members, there is another method of accountability for board members. OEA has on more than one occasion referred investigations of board members. In some cases that I know of, multiple investigations of the same board member, and the department never acted, or I'm unaware of any action publicly. Can the department do better in that realm?
I'm aware of removal of one board member in Bath County that I removed based on an OEA report. Most of the recommendations are from OEA are around training of board members. So every OEA report in the 4 years I've been here that I'm aware of, we implemented the recommendations. But you know, there's a key piece about board member training, and that's training on how to hire a superintendent. If we hire our superintendents based on ethical, fiscal management, and ability to help students learn, then we might not have some of these issues. But
Did the department not receive a recommendation from somewhere other than Bath County that a board member had violated her oath of office?
well, we're in the process of a couple right now, removal. That may be one you're talking about that I probably couldn't say publicly, but if you check with me afterwards and tell me the district you're talking about, we can tell you that it's in process. Yes, there is one in process right now. And you know, we just took over one school district, Monticello and Breathitt. The local board is only advisory in Breathitt. It's state managed, and Monticello is moving that direction, and there'll be others over the next few months.
You all have allowed the school board, and I don't know if it's an ordinance, a resolution, a regulation, I don't know what governs this flexibility. But it is allowed for you all to roll over the contracts for your superintendent. And that was a very common practice at Mason County. And I want to know if you all are considering not allowing a rollover of their contracts anymore, that they must renegotiate at the end of their contract term.
Well, I'll just tell you from having been a local superintendent, if my 4-year contract is up, say this June, and I haven't negotiated a new contract, I'm looking for a job. Because it typically takes anywhere from 6 months to a year to get a superintendent position in most cases. So I think it's important that the public know about the discussion, they know the evaluation, and they know the contract benefits, full disclosure of all that. Now, should you roll over a contract, a 4-year contract every single year? I don't think so. I don't think you need to do that. So we'll look into that a little bit closer, and Ren can give everyone.
One of the things we're going to do is we're going to create a template contract for school districts to use, which will have the standard terms and conditions in there. As you know, all school districts use their own variation of contracts. So we're going to come up with a template, which are going to set up some good fiscal practices in the contract. For example, one of the things which you want to consider in a contract is, even if you have a 4-year contract and you roll over, you've got to make sure that that provision can be opted out by the local board, because the local board is the only entity which can make that decision every year to continue that contract. So we're going to make sure that there's contract language in there which requires that the board has the ability, the legal ability, to exit that contract. But that is part of that whole discussion we've had about when we put the contracts on our website. We're also going to give guidance to both school board members and to school administrators on best practices in developing contracts. There are a lot of districts who have good templates, but as you know, there's a lot of districts who don't have any templates. They write contracts on, as we found through these audits, on napkins and paper towels. So we're going to stop that practice.
Marla, I would also address that particular issue, having served through 4 contracts in Clark County, and I certainly want to acknowledge those tremendous members of the Boards of Education that I worked with in Clark County. But a good superintendent is not easily found for most communities. I mean, that's a tremendous blend in order to have a successful marriage. So it is advantageous sometimes for the superintendent to know that security is there for a period of time, even for he and she or whomever it may be, to work with a possibility of new board members being there during his particular tenure. For example, in Mason County, you have 1 board member that's starting the 9th year, you have 2 board members with 16 months experience, and you have 2 board members with 3 months of experience.
You won write-in candidates, right?
Yes,
Yeah, that's
because
amazing.
all 5 of them, for numerous reasons, were up for election at one particular period of time. But a new superintendent coming into Mason County wants to get a feel, and I would assume would want to explore what each particular board member in Mason County is looking for in a superintendent. Because not very many people want to take a job for a 4-year period of time. I don't think you even
Tell me
want
about
that
it.
at the legislature.
Tell me about it. Anyone else have any other questions? Certainly everyone's going to be available for any one-on-one questions. Thank you very much for being here.